as I go along. Thanks, Renata. So welcome. Thank you for all of you who came, whether it's because of nosiness or because you are services officers, or you might become a services officer, or you're willing to help out with this very important part of the annual report. As I said, please ask questions as we go along, and I will try and answer them. You'll find that I often rely on Jane's long experience, I should say, with being services officer. And if other people on the call have answers to questions, it would be fantastic if you could chip in and help us out with that. So I guess let's get, hopefully everybody received the copy of the services report form that I sent, and the evaluation forms. We can have a discussion about that as well. The forms are up on the website. I know that many chapters have sort of started to look at what goes on those forms and getting them ready to put together for the deadline. So perhaps if Renata, you could share the report form, that would be fantastic. Renata is the mysterious IOD Canada symbol there, and will be helping us with the technical process this morning. Okay, so let's just start right in on it. And as I said, if you have questions as they come up, please ask them, because it will make the workshop much more beneficial to everybody. So the services annual report form, it's a short form, but the one that lots of information needs to be included on in order to report all the things that we're doing in the services field for IODE. And you'll notice as we go along that there is some overlap with other forms and how we might deal with reporting information in more than one place. And I'll talk about how I extract information from your services forms and the provincial services forms to make the final IOD Canada services report. So the deadline this year for all the forms is 31st of January. So you have the whole month of January to ensure that this information is completed. Once the form is complete, you should send a copy to your provincial services officer. They will use your forms and the information that they have of provincial activities to generate the provincial report. Obviously, for chapters that don't have a provincial chapter, they will just be reporting directly to IOD Canada. So you send a copy to your services officer, copy to the provincial secretary. The secretary in my province, British Columbia, likes to put all of the reports together and submit those to IOD Canada as a final report. But to make it easier for the people who put these up onto the website, we'll talk about in a while, we should send a copy to the provincial secretary, a copy to the National Annual Report Office, that iodecdn@gmail.com, that was started last year, and it has made the generation of provincial and national reports so much easier, because every report that is submitted by a chapter is there and can be read by all of the officers. As I said, if you're a chapter under national jurisdiction, those are chapters where there's no provincial chapter. They can just mail it directly to that IODE-CDN. This saves you having to mail it to offices around the country, for chapters like the Trillium chapter. You don't want to be mailing it around the province. It makes it so much easier if those reports are mailed to IODE-CDN, and then everybody can look at the reports and use them to generate other reports. So I think the information on there that you put on this first box the name of your chapter, its location and province. As services contact, your chapter may not have a formal services officer, but somebody in the chapter is responsible for putting the report together, be it the secretary, president, somebody who's really good at putting forms together. If you could give us their contact name and phone number and email address, so that as other people are going through the report, if they have so many questions, they know directly who to contact. It makes it just that much easier. If there's no services report, obviously fill that in and check that box. I am not sure that there are, in fact, any chapters across the country who do not have some sort of services report. It may not be massive projects, but most chapters will have some services report too. Any questions about that so far? When it is due, where it is due, just makes it easier for everybody to be able to find those reports and read them. So if we could scroll down a little bit to the table on page 1, I think we can get, yes, we've got the whole thing there. So these donations on this page are the ones that you will get the numbers from your chapter treasurer. The numbers that you enter in here should match the numbers that the chapter treasurer will be putting on the treasurer's report. It's the treasurer's report is obviously a very important one for all the activities of the chapter, but those don't end up necessarily in the same place. So you need to check with your treasurer the things that go onto this page. So most of the provincial chapters have a provincial services fund, and that's the amount that your chapter donates to that provincial services fund. You'll notice that the rest of the provincial funds are split up according to the province that you're in. So Alberta has 2 provincial funds, as does BC. New Brunswick still has 4 funds, Born to Read, the Health Centre Foundation, Portage Atlantic, and the Roots of Empathy. Nova Scotia has 2. And then there are 4 funds in Ontario that chapters make donations to: the Community Association Riding for Disabled, Footwear for Kids, Shipping Fund, and Toys for the North. So, as I said, those numbers should be derived in consultation with your chapter treasurer. The 3 national funds that are reported on this services report are the Canadian Disaster Fund, the Services Fund, which has been used for shipping to the North and to Newfoundland and Labrador, and the Snack Pack Fund. This is the specific fund that is part of the services portfolio that provides snack pack to schools in Newfoundland and Labrador. The majority of these schools are in communities that do not have a grocery store. So unlike most of us, if we putting together a donation to a school or to a community centre, we can go to the local grocery store, get a good deal on whatever items of food or otherwise we wish to include in our donation, and get a decent price for them. The majority of these schools are in areas that do not have a grocery store. And this is where IOD Canada submits a request, if you will, to the Labrador, to the shipping company for Labrador. They source the items in the snack pack and distribute those to the 15 schools that we support in Newfoundland and Labrador. If your chapter provides food items to a school in Labrador, you've adopted a school, that is not included in this. This is specifically donations to Snack Pack. I know many chapters across the country make donations to the Snack Pack program because they understand the importance of kids in schools having nutritious food and a snack during the day. It helps them learn. So are there any questions about that? Please, as I said, I don't want this to just be me reeling off information. It needs to be the questions coming from you. Karen.
Just for your information, card won't be on this anymore next year.
Oh,
I would
okay.
leave it on this year.
It
But
is on this year or not?
Well, I would leave it on this year in
Okay.
case there's
Yeah, well,
dribbles.
the form's out, so we're
Yeah.
going to leave it there. But card is no longer going to be supported.
Yes, by provincial.
Yeah. But presumably there may be some chapters who have supported it in the past who might continue to do so.
Yeah.
Provincial services. 2125. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any other, Gloria?
Just an additional to Karen's comment, there were donations made this year, so reporting for 2024 certainly needs to be on there.
Okay,
yes.
That's good. So it'll be taken off for 2025.
Yes.
That's great. Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Kathy?
I'm new to this. This is my first year as a member and as a service officer.
Well, congratulations and thank you.
Thanks. In order to gain more information on what is behind all of these funds, is that all in the members' resources on the website? Where would I go to get as much information on
the national funds? I would think for the provincial funds that are relevant to your province, you would be best talking to the provincial services officer.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? I mean,
yes.
Is there anything we can help with right now, or you just generally?
No, thank you. We've started a bit of an initiative with respect to the snack packs, so it's very helpful. We've gotten some information on that. So I just thought going forward, where would I go?
Yeah, as I said, the 3 national funds, there is information on the website. And if you have any further questions, by all means, send me an email or give me a phone call. And the person who's got their hand up next is another fantastic resource for that information.
Thank you.
So thank you for using your electronic hands. It makes it much easier for me to see you rather than if you're just waving at me. Jane.
I just wanted to say that in addition to being on the website, the background between all national funds, not just the services ones, but the education ones and all the others, comes out each year in the secretary's mailing to everyone in August, which usually comes in September.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's lots of information.
Would have a copy.
Yeah. There is lots of information in that mass mailing that goes to chapters. And as I said, any other questions, by all means, get in touch and we'll do our best to answer them questions or direct you at least to the right place to get your answers.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So I think that basically then any box that you've entered a number, those get tabulated and go on to the total value of services programs for page 1. I should tell you that when I generate the National Services Report, I have set up an Excel spreadsheet. Excel is wonderful because you can plug in numbers and it does all the calculation for you. I must admit, I tend to run my eye over it. Being a high school science teacher and particularly teaching chemistry, I always get the kids to make an estimate of things. So when you ask them how many atoms you would find in 5 grams of carbon, they don't end up with a number like 600, which makes them very big atoms. So, that sort of scanning to make sure the numbers look good. But that's where I will take the numbers off your reports and the services report from the provincial officer and do a tally on how much is donated to various funds. Maybe we could now move on to page 2, which is where things start to get more complicated. What we've tried to do here is break up your donations of service items into a variety of categories. to make it easier for you to work out how donations have been made. We have 9 categories here. Some chapters still have trouble deciding how to divide up the numbers. And we find an awful lot of things get put into miscellany. We've tried to give some examples of what this category might involve, being specifically things like backpacks, fresh start baskets, good grooming bags. Somebody pointed out yesterday that many chapters prefer to use the time personal care items rather than good grooming, because good grooming does sound rather like people who are in need aren't well groomed. I think personal care might be a more modern and global term, so the Services Committee can look at that next year. And then the last chapter, the last section, number 9, seems to be where people, well, we can't decide what this really is, so we'll put it in number 9, work we haven't reported elsewhere. I'll come back to that in a moment. So when we're looking at these categories, the numbers that you're going to be reporting here can come from 2 sources. I mentioned on page 1, the numbers need to come from the chapter secretary. So those are chapter donations to various funds. In here, the chapter may be making donations of equipment and furnishings to schools, senior shelters, hospitals, churches, community centres, etc. The other half of the number that goes in here, though, are from individual chapters, chapter members, excuse me. So hopefully all of your chapters have some way of recording donations that chapter members make throughout the year. One of the big advantages of our IODE planner, and this is this year's, is that on each monthly page, I'm trying to find one whether I've actually been. You have, these boxes for all of the IOD activities that I participate in. On the right-hand column, it's called Things to Remember. It's my camera. So there's a column there, and I can note down all of the donations that I make, be it clothing and equipment. I moved this year. Wouldn't recommend it to anybody, and downsized considerably in my home. So I have made a lot of donations of new and used items, 10 boxes of quilting fabric, for instance, that would go into my personal donations to, there's a wonderful company in Vancouver that recycles fabric from manufacturers, but also from people like me who have massive amounts of fabric that they need to donate. Sorry, I see some waving going on in Freda's. Was that a question coming up? No, just being friendly. Okay, thanks. Kathy.
I believe what you're referring to is the difference between cash donations and in kind.
Yes,
is what
indeed.
we call it.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the challenges is, especially when someone like you is downsizing, because we experience that as well, is how do you put a value, a price on them? So I know there is a list,
yes,
but it doesn't necessarily have everything on it.
It doesn't have everything on it. Some of it is a matter of, I don't think that was sent to you, the other piece of information that was sent to you. And it has, if it's new items, it's relatively easy. If you're making a donation of towels or items for a layette that are new, you put in the price that you paid for the items. If it's used donations, there are a lot of things on that list that you might be able to estimate. Somebody yesterday made a really good suggestion. If you're not sure how much to list things at, a visit to a secondhand shop or even one of the IODE thrift shops can give you a good idea of how much things might be sold for that were used. cash donations that are made by the chapter that involve buying books or food can be added on this list. The front page is just for the major funds, but it's a bit complicated. My chapter, for instance, puts together backpacks that will be given to youth aging out of care, provincial care in BC. So some of the items in those backpacks were donated by members. So, you know, if you've got brand new toothbrushes or bottles of shampoo, you can bring them in and these will go into those backpacks. So we have a better idea of the price. If it's hand knitted items, there are values given on that evaluation sheet. So it's a matter of sort of guesstimating, if you will. Rose Carolyn, your hand.
Yes, I was wondering about, like, we picked up angels from the angel tree. And now, do they go on this or do they just go somewhere?
I would, so can you explain what the angels on the angel tree are? It's not something.
Well, they're a Christmas present. We got a little boy and we ended up, because it just said Bluey or Paw Patrol or Roblox, and it didn't say or, it just had the three listed. So Leanne and I ended up with about $80 worth of things, and then we return it to the
store.
To the angel
so
tree.
it might go in number 5, books, magazines, toys.
They would, yes. Now,
so the value that you paid for the value that you paid for those gifts would go in there.
And we can include that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
What I was going to say before I get to Kathy again is we, as I said, do these backpacks. If we look at the things in there, there's a towel. So we're not going to split it up and add it to the list twice. We've come up with a value for the backpack and its contents. This is on education, but we put together bags with brand new books that we give to kindergarten students. So we don't put in the value of the books on this page and then the total bag with books on the education thing. We we come up with a value for our book bags, and that's what we reported, the final value. Kathy.
With respect to some of the used items that we might send out, a question came up recently where the one of our members went out and purchased a number of socks, like a whole box full of socks.
Great.
The value that she paid for those socks was much less than the value that would have showed on the list.
Right.
Which value do we use? What we actually paid, or do we value it at what it's been shown?
Unfortunately, I think, you know, good shoppers find things that are cheaper. So we for the socks.
So it's the true value, not
I think
by this.
I
This
think
is a
that's how it should
guideline,
be.
as I understand.
Yes, it was a guideline, but I think that the true value is appropriate. We did increase, for instance, the value of used clothing, bedding, towels, things for layouts at $15 a pound, because the $10 a pound really wasn't covering it. But depending on where you shop, new items now cost considerably more than probably the valuation sheet has. So I think the value that should be reported is the value that's paid. So what you need to do is make sure that every member of your chapter is keeping a record of things that they're donating. There's a number of opportunities across the country, for instance, to hand in used glasses. Those of us who wear glasses, you know, buy new ones. Used glasses can be donated to a variety of places, and then they will be used elsewhere. So it's a bit of a juggle working out what the value of those is. It's obviously less than that you might have paid for glasses when they were new, but it you know, you might want to talk to an optician to give you an idea of the value of used glasses, for instance, or computers. One of the organizers in my husband's laboratory has in the past accepted used computers. They clean off the hard drives and then donate them to a variety of organizations. Used computers have a lot less value than new ones these days, as everything changes. But there is value in those, or in used cell phones that many of us don't want lying around the house, certainly don't want to throw into the landfill, and we need to come up with some value for them. But each member in your chapter should be keeping a record of purchases they're making or donations they're making, so that those can then be recorded on this chapter's services report. Anne?
Yes, our chapter sent 10 boxes to the north while the October shipping was free.
Right.
And in one of the boxes, we had 12 full top and bottom nursing uniforms as well. For nurses or whomever. And we didn't quite know how to price them. So I asked the person what they paid, and it was between 80 and 100. Wow. So we thought maybe $35 to $40 a pair was
that sounds
appropriate
to me. Yeah.
Okay, good.
That's fantastic. I think that makes it very obvious. Any other questions? There's a couple of things that come to my mind. And do you still have?
Yes.
Another question, comment?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take it away.
That's okay. No problem. I do appreciate people using their hand. Now your pictures are all into a very narrow column down the side of my screen. I don't want to miss out on people. Somebody had their hand up and it's gone away. Who was it? Gloria. Thank you.
I was just going to mention to Anne and to Liz that because we're doing provincial shipping a little differently now with chapters having adopted the communities. And we're going to be asking the chapters to record that differently and probably under category 9. So if you can keep your donations to your community separate, and we'll be in touch as to how we'd like it reported to us.
Okay, that's great. And
thank you. I believe I did send that to you, Gloria, a couple of days ago. So hopefully you have received that. If not, I can do that again.
Please do it again. I haven't seen anything.
Okay. And so, Gloria, that will then appear on the provincial services report, but I will look also in number 9 for not reported elsewhere. That will include the donations to those nursing stations.
Yes, we just want to be able to track and see how well the program is going.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. And that is a good segue into, did you have other? Okay, a good segue into the other things I wanted to mention. This is, so far is all about reporting numbers, and those are very important. All that information will go to Revenue Canada so that they can see what IODE is doing with regards to services and provision of supports to our communities across the country. The small box at the bottom of the page is the one that I find to be, as I said, all of these numbers get entered into an Excel spreadsheet for each chapter, and the total for the chapters, the total for the province, and then the total for Canada is calculated. And I don't want there to be, double reporting of items. We'll come back to sort of where things appear. But the interest that I have is in looking at the details of what those donations or services activities are. And I'm trying to find my report. Hidden it again. Oh, here it is. Okay, so this is where I'm looking for some information from your chapter of, say you made a donation to support an animal shelter. One of the things that I discovered as I was downsizing is that animal shelters and the SPCA and so on love to get donations of used towels. So we think about, donating towels so that other people can use them as towels, but towels get worn out, bedding gets worn out. And so animal shelters love to receive towels or parts thereof that they can use to, deal with animals that are in shelters or even for supporting service animals. So I'm looking for as much written detail. And I don't mean that you have to write me an essay. I'd love point form. If you could say section number 3, we support a child or children going to a summer camp. We donate used hockey equipment to a girls and boys club. We donated books and magazines to a community centre for programs. Give me some details. If you use a acronym for a service, it takes me a bit of time to find out sometimes what that organisation is that you've made donations to. It would really help if you could maybe list it out once so that I can work out that you're giving used hockey equipment to a community centre that supports kids who are perhaps unhoused. Just in the notes, and I recognise that you might need a couple of pages because I look at how much work each chapter is doing. Small things may not seem like really big programs that your chapter has, but if your individual members are making fresh start baskets or grooming kits for women in shelters or whatever, I'd love a bit of detail. So I have the Excel spreadsheet that I can put the numbers in. What I did last year was started a Word file where each chapter's report, I cut and paste your services activities from that box into the various categories. And it ended up with, I think, 15 pages of 10 font, just collecting the information. And so then I could go, well, 12 chapters of providing used bedding to an animal shelter. And it makes it much more interesting than when we're writing the report to see exactly what it is you're doing. Rose Carolyn.
Does this include, when you were talking about children to camp, I sent one to a church camp,
Yep.
Camp Getty. Is that included?
Yeah, I think so.
I gave the family money for gas to get her there, to go back down and bring her home, and for a meal on the way coming.
That sounds fantastic.
That's all included?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So that's supporting people in your community who need a little bit of extra help.
So that goes in, let me see.
Well, where did we put it in? Probably in 3. Camps are a variety of different focuses on camps. What came up yesterday and wanted to reiterate is that particularly in something like number 5, books, magazines, lots of chapters provide supports to a variety of schools or to education programs within schools and outside schools. We're not asking you to double dip, so to speak. Don't report it on the financial side on the education report and the services report. But if you are doing that, I would love you just to give a little bit of, you don't have to put the monetary amount in on this form because you put it in on education. Give us at least the details on here as well. I will read the education reports. I don't want to miss things that I think belong on the services report, but are listed on the education report and vice versa. So the advantage of this website that you'd be sending all of the annual reports to is that I can read all of the reports. One of the things I do is to look at the secretary's report to find out how you make the money that you're going to be doing, that you're going to be using to provide services. And I want to be able to record that information. I'm not going to record how much money you raise. That goes on the treasurer's reports, obviously. But I would like to know how you're making money in order to be able to use it. And a lot of that, of course, is individuals providing these services. As Rose Carolyn said, you provide the money to, send this child to camp, to support the parents getting them to the camp, picking them up from the camp. And those things I'd like to be able to talk about, even if I'm not putting the specific amounts in, if there's overlap with the education report. I don't want to be stealing information from the education report, but I will read the education report to see that things that are being done to support students inside and outside of schools. Kathy, thank you so much for all your questions. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's because I'm so new. Can I get some clarification on section 9? Did you want those details included in the box 9?
Well, they
or
go
down
in the
below?
bottom box.
Down
So
below.
all you're doing is number 9, and this now in Ontario is going to be if you're supporting the nursing stations in the north. So you give me a monetary value there, but down in the box, that should be a special project that might cover multiple things on the other in the other categories in 1 to 8, but it's a special project that you were doing.
It's only special projects.
And so we need the number there, but I'd like some details as to what that involves. So if you're sending packages to a nursing station, I'd love to hear that you put in some uniforms as well as all of the other bits and pieces. And I know there is overlap between the education fund, and I'm not trying to steal any of the education fund's glory. And it's very hard for us to separate things that are supporting programs in schools. Somebody said, well, if you provide a meal for a school, the cost of the food preparation could go on this one, and then anything else could go onto the education report. And I'll talk about service hours in a moment. Were there any other questions?
Yes, I was wondering in particular, we collect and donate milk bags, the outer bags,
Right.
which are then made into mats.
Right.
For the homeless.
Fantastic idea.
Quite a bit gets done out in my area in particular, but I was just not sure, where would something like that go?
That's a good question. Doesn't really fit under food, does it? Maybe it would go into miscellany.
If they're mats, wouldn't it be furnishings?
We only donate the bags.
Oh, okay.
Somebody else makes them into mats.
Someone else is making them and putting them on to other organizations.
Would it not go under bedding? Because I'm making the large ones. Is it not part of a bedding?
If you're making the mats, then
Yes, I am. Then it's under bedding.
Would add into reactions.
Pardon? Has anybody else got a suggestion?
Yeah, we do here. Couldn't you put that collecting the bags, that might be citizenship? Because you're just collecting the bags for the community.
Well, the hours that you take to do it, and that was going to be my next comment, all of the hours for everything that you do, whether it's education, services, citizenship, all of the hours are reported under citizenship. You'll notice on the citizenship form, there is a place for your volunteer hours. So you collect those hours from every member in your chapter and record them on the citizenship form.
Okay.
What those hours are taken to complete go on the individual educational services or even citizenship. So if you want to report the mat, collecting all those bags, even making the mats, and you want to put that onto citizenship, fine. The hours would certainly go under citizenship. If you want to make a note on the chapter that your chapter is making some of the mats, then those would go under, I think, furnishings.
I think too that we had associated a small value to the mats.
Yeah.
And that we were donating all of this plastic, and
Yes.
it does add up to a
It
fair
does.
amount.
Yeah.
And there's also pill bottles that
Right.
we're forwarding on to a group that sends it to Doctors Without
Yeah,
Borders.
well, that definitely goes under number 6.
Okay. Yes.
Emergency aid or medical aid.
Okay.
But it's, I don't want to make it too complicated for people, but it is an important thing to remember that all of the hours that IODE members devote to IODE work, as well as to other organizations that aren't reporting your hours, all of those hours get recorded on the citizenship form. And in the details on your citizenship form, you need to list how those hours are accumulated by members. And as I said previously, I will read those citizenship reports so I can say, well, look, here's a chapter that is fulfilling all of these activities that look like services. I may not have a number from it, but of hours, but I do see how chapter members are devoting hours to citizenship work that are reported on the citizenship form. I'm going to talk about that on the services report as well. I'm not recording those hours separately, but I do want to capture how IOD members are working. Gloria, did you have...
I just wanted to add a comment to what you were saying, Liz, about the importance of description.
Yes.
The Ontario Provincial Services Report, we include items from every chapter that reports to us as to what that chapter did. Yeah. It may not be the most money-making idea. It may be something small, but we're trying to give other chapter members ideas that perhaps they can take and run with, because chapters do find it difficult sometimes to find small projects, medium-sized projects.
Right, and those are really important projects. Recognizing what IOD members do, we're not a fundraising organization, although it seems like, with the emphasis on money, it seems like that sometimes. We are providing services to our communities, within schools, with outside schools, in a variety of different organizations. And we want to be able to boast about it. It's very hard for women, in particular for IOD women, it seems, to admit just how much you're doing to support other people. So I love the fact that the Ontario report covers something that each chapter has done. And I'm trying to include that idea when I write the national report. This is where I'm cutting and pasting all of your ideas, in the hope also that another chapter, as you said, may go, oh, that's something we could do, or there's something similar to that we could do, that's not requiring us to raise a huge amount of funds. And it might seem like a very small project, but all of those small projects add up to what IOD women achieve and how they support others. Other questions, comments? I think there was another hand up, and I know they stay up for a while and then drop off.
Actually, it was me, and I did put it down, but we were collecting a lot of pill bottles for the Doctors Without Borders, and then we gave them thousands, and we were asked to stop because they had more than enough. Right. But now we are asking for pill bottles again, because now we have 2 organizations, and we're filling these pill bottles with shampoo.
Fantastic.
So that it can go to their, wherever it is they are, homeless or so now we're looking for them again. So if any of them are of our members are from Ontario or close anywhere to London, we would love to have the pill bottles back again, because we're kind of starting from all over again, but making a good use of them.
Yeah, it's just they need to be well sealed if you're going to put shampoo in them. I
Oh,
tried it
absolutely.
once with
Oh,
some
yes.
cream, and the seal wasn't quite good enough, and it ended up all over the inside of my, luckily of a washer bag rather than just in my suitcase. But
We'll certainly do our best. Thank you.
yeah. It's I do have a funny story. My father-in-law used to love very spicy food, and he came to visit us in Vancouver, and every meal we put on the table he would cover with spicy sauces. And he took some back to Australia with him in his suitcase, and one of the bottles broke. And so he had I can't think of the name of the very spicy sauce all over the inside of his suitcase and his underwear. Part of it felt a little like justice, because I had a bad cold, and then I made a meal out of a gourmet magazine, which took me almost all day. And the first, course of the meal, he got out this sauce and just sprinkled it all over. So I must admit, when I heard that his bottle was broken in his luggage, a part of me went, well, you deserve that. Sorry, there was something popped up in the chat then. Let's see what it says. Yeah, could attendees please put their chapter names up on their titles, because I've got an attendance list, and I'm trying to make sure that I capture everybody. The 2 workshops from today and yesterday are going to be posted on the website. I don't know whether you noticed that the Secretary's report and the Treasurer's report meetings are already up there. So if people in your chapter are still interested and couldn't make it to the session today, please have a look at those. It'll take them probably a week or two because all of these meetings are happening in the next sort of week to get them up there, but they are worth. But if you could, just modify your name to give us your chapter, that would be really good. It's nice to know that we're reaching people across the country, and a few people that I had on my list as perhaps coming to the meeting, and I know things come up, but they weren't able to make it. So any other questions, comments? I can't say enough that it is really important that all of your service hours that you recorded throughout the year should be added to your chapter's volunteer hours. I know many chapters break up, I volunteer with education in this amount, with services in that amount, and I'll report those somewhere. But the total service hours that I shouldn't call them service hours, the total hours that you devote to IODE activities or other organisations that don't record your hours specifically need to appear on the citizenship report. And what I would like is that you add a thing on your citizenship report that tells how those sorry, I was reading the chat which popped up in my window. But tell us how you devote your time. I wonder sometimes I look at the hours of that are reported on Primary Chapter Citizen, and then I look at all of the things that you're doing in various categories, and I can't make those 2 numbers add up, because I know how many hours it takes to shop, to read minutes, to prepare reports, to do all of those things that most of us go, oh yeah, there was a bit of time. That's the advantage of the IODE planners, where you can write down, okay, I attended this meeting, it lasted this much time, but I also spent about an hour reading all the minutes. And you've attended today's workshop, make sure you put that down. Okay, even if you feel like, well, I didn't say anything, but you were there, you're using your time, which is valuable, to support IOD and to support the things that IOD does across the country. So please make sure that those are recorded. And I'm sorry if your chapter prefers to have it split up into the various reports, we still need to get that summary to know what's going on. Karen.
Pardon me. I think a lot of IODE people volunteer at other organizations as well.
Mhm.
Would it be helpful to kind of put, I volunteer at the CNE, so to put these many hours for the CNE, these many hours for IOTE if possible? Because sometimes I think it looks suspicious when you have 3,000 hours and you only have to go to 2 meetings.
Right.
That's a bit of exaggeration.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Yes, I think it helps. And somehow, I'm not sure what Shirley Ann's message means. Sorry, it pops right up into the front of where I'm looking at you. So I have a hard time not reading it. Yes, you need to add the hours that you, as long as it's not an organization that specifically records your hours for volunteering as well.
Right.
But I would imagine work at the CNE isn't necessarily recorded by the CNE specifically. So yes, all of the hours. I mean, IOD women amaze me. When I first joined the organization and looked at all the things that some members do, and that all members do in the quiet ways, they don't necessarily take on major leadership positions, but they're still working really hard. I think we need to acknowledge those hours. And it may be that if you list on your report where you volunteer, somebody might go, oh, yes, I do that. Or I'm constantly, taking my neighbor's dog for a walk. Those are valuable things in developing community connections, which is something that IOD women are extremely good at, is maintaining connections between people. We all made it through the horrors of COVID and the isolation that it developed. We found ways in there to continue to support other people in their community. So we may not have been able to do the big fundraising projects that we've done prior to COVID, but we found other ways of making sure that people are making connections and helping others. So I think we need to be really strong in how we report what we're doing. And the advantages other people have said is that it provides an opportunity for somebody to go, well, that's a really good idea. That's not going to cost our chapter a huge amount of money. And we're a small chapter. So, a chapter that's got 70 members is going to be able to do, or a thrift store is going to be able to do very different things to a chapter that's got 10 members. One of the women in my chapter, we actually took our meeting to her because she's not able to travel to meetings anymore. And she's celebrating her 95th birthday. So we took our chapter meeting to her house, which seems like an imposition, but she has full-time carer. And she loved it. The fact that she was still part of the meeting. She's been, we presented her with her 30-year pin. She was quite chuffed about, getting a certificate. And she's actually been in IOD for 36 years. We thought we'd make sure she's got the 30. In a few years, we'll give her a 40-year pin. But by moving the chapter meeting to her, and so she got to see everybody and make some suggestions about things, it's that connection thing. And she herself said, any other time you want to come and have your meetings here, that's great. And her full-time carer said exactly the same thing. She's been so excited that she would see everybody again. So those things are what IOD women do. We support other people in amazing ways. And we need to be a bit better at reporting those things. I'm not talking about just the numbers thing, which, IOD Canada does an incredible amount with, small groups of women, but just the ideas that come out, but, well, my chapter does this, and other chapters go, well, yeah, we can modify that to work for us. It's harder to, perhaps in a large city like Vancouver or Toronto, to do things that people in a smaller community might be able to do, but not impossible. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I'll just look at my list to see if the things were things have gone much faster this morning than they did yesterday, maybe because I'm tired. pushing it along more quickly. Karen, did you have another?
I have another comment, and I don't know if now's the time to say it or not, but has there been any thought put to changing some of these names, like good grooming bags, to something that's more modern, that the chapters that have been around for 900 years know what they are, but newer chapters might have a different way of, as you said, putting a different name on it.
Yeah.
It might excite a chapter to get into it again under a new name.
Yes, I think that's, you know.
And I think we need to do that at the provincial level too.
Yeah. I think that is a good point. And as I said, it came up yesterday with the changing of good grooming bags to personal care or whatever. I agree that, and if your chapter uses a different name, by all means record it that way. Because that might also, and you know, push us to modernizing things is not always the right thing to do, but we are an organization that has evolved drastically from when it was formed. But we've kept the same ideal, if you will. I mean, when I think about chapters buying cigarettes to provide to service people, that's not something we would consider a good thing now, but it happened in the past. And we, you know, society was different then. So I think modernization can be a good thing as long as we don't just do it. Well, we've got to change everything to modernize it.
Also, in talking to chapters that are planning on retiring, the main thing I get from them is we were doing the same thing we've always done for so long, and unless we're going to have something new to excite the members, I can't keep them here.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that both the provincial and the national chapters are missing.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's really important that we share with other chapters the things that we do. Because it may be that an idea that seems to one chapter like a new one might pull a group out who are considering retiring. From my experience with that, retiring can also often be driven by a group who are going, well, we can't do it the way we've always done it, so we should just stop. And maybe if we could come up with some more modern things or some different ideas of ways to help others, people could say, well, yes, we can't do it the same way because the world has changed and we've changed, but maybe we could take on a completely different role, that this chapter has mentioned that they do a certain thing. It's very hard, I think, for provincial and national chapters to mandate what chapters do. But I think the more information we share, the more likely that somebody will come up and say, oh, that's like well, why don't we do something that's sort of like that, but recognizes our community as being different and what they need. And I think the other thing that's really important is that we ask organizations or individuals within our community what they need, rather than saying, this is what we're giving you. My chapter, I think I mentioned it before, and I'm sorry if I keep mentioning my chapter, but we're a small group we call ourselves small but mighty. We've put together these backpacks. Now, one of the members of the BC provincial chapter, her son works for Herschel, who manufacture backpacks. Well, we were given a large number of large, beautiful backpacks. They're last year's model, and the two services officers have done a brilliant job of shopping for things to go in these backpacks. One of the chapter members, her sister, is a fantastic crocheter, and so she's made blankets. So a blanket went into every backpack. They went and bought a towel and a face cloth, or a towel and a hand towel on sale. One of those went into every backpack. A bag, you know, just not a fancy grooming bag, but a big Ziploc bag with toothbrushes, toothpaste, razors. We've set up some bags for young women and some bags for young men, different things that have gone into those bags. And the other thing we put in there was a gift card to one of the big stores so that they could, go and buy things they needed. Last year we put socks and underwear. Well, the organisation that we're handing these on to hand out to young people said, well, the underwear, T-shirts, that's not really what we need. We need this instead. And so we've gone to the organisation, asked what they needed. They've given us a list. Unfortunately, a cell phone was on that list. Well, our group can't afford to buy cell phones or even get refurbished cell phones. But we found one of the big telephone companies has, I see your hand, Gloria, I'm almost done, has a way of getting cell phones. So we passed on the information. But I think that really important step of going and asking what people need rather than us deciding what they need has made these backpacks, and they're stuffed completely full. They've got water bottles and or a coffee mug, all sorts of things in them. But it was driven by Aunt Leah's, this organisation that deals with kids who age out of care. This is what we need for young women or young men aging out of care. So I think that's another important part of it. Something that IODE is promoting across the board is let's ask what people need and then see if we can provide it, rather than this is what we think you need. Gloria, your hand's been up patiently for so long.
When you were talking about backpacks, at our last provincial meeting, one of the items that came out was so many people have luggage that they do not use anymore. Instead of donating empty luggage, fill that luggage with used clothing for men or for women and give it to a homeless shelter, because many of those people only have a garbage bag in which to carry their belongings. And this is a little more dignified, and it's an idea maybe that other chapters or areas of the country can run with too.
Yeah, and particularly for kids who are in emergency care facilities. Yes. The thought of having a child walk around with their belongings in a black garbage bag is just horrifying to most of us, I think. So that's a really good idea, Gloria. Thank you. Anne.
Yes, we've done it over the years with our largest purse. If it's an older purse, and we've just filled them up and given them to the women's shelters. But we also have social times. We did a few day trips with all of us. Carpooling to the Toyota plant was one trip. To a gardening center was another trip. We have dinner before we go to the meeting, and then we go to a different place to have the meeting. So we do a lot of social times. If a member is sick, then we all call. We've got a great phoning line. So we're more than just working. We are really looking after each other as well as a group. And there's about 30 of us, and we're still trying to recruit younger members, but we don't want kids, right? We just want people that will give their new ideas, and this is where we go by. So we have a really, really good time. Right. So it's not just work and not just meetings, because we're losing them through meetings.
Yeah, and these reports are onerous, I agree, but we don't want them to be so difficult to fill in that people just say, well, we won't bother. Right. And as I said, when you see a chapter telling you, well, we did 100 hours of work as an IODE chapter this year, I fail to see how that can be possible, especially when you look at all the things that chapter has done. And I think that the social time is a really important part of it. A lot of meetings perhaps feel very formal. Everybody's giving their reports. We used to have everybody talk at the meeting about one thing that's happened to them personally. Mostly it would be the positive things. Occasionally it would be something negative, and then we all sort of, how can we help? But now because we meet on a Sunday, we tend to get together early and have lunch together, and then that's when the social time comes up. And then the other thing that's come out of it is people going, well, you all know this woman. Do you think she'd like to join IOD? Can we invite her to our next social function? rather than maybe to a formal meeting. Sometimes when you invite people along to a meeting, if it's a meeting that requires a lot of formal reports, people go, I don't really want to go to an organization where I have to meet once a month and, spend all my time talking about all the work I need to do. But I think that sharing between chapters is a really important way to keep this organization alive and dynamic, because we are doing an amazing amount. As I said, when I read through all of the reports last year, it stunned me, the things that people have suggested doing. Made me feel a little bit guilty that maybe we're doing too much of that. Well, this chapter's always done this way, so maybe we need to move on from that. I'm not saying get rid of all of the things that we've always done in the past, but recognizing that the world is a very different place now. So, anybody else? Wow, we've finished within about an hour, which is fantastic. Linda, I can't read the whole message. Sorry, chopping around. Yeah, the chapter names really help if somebody said something and we want to go, oh, I'd like to read about that. As I said, we'll try and get as much of this information as possible on the annual report so you can share those. Once the reports are in and, the national reports are out and they'll be posted, don't think that the report timing is over, because then is a good time to go back and look at it and go, well, this chapter's doing this. Let's contact them and get a bit more information about how they go about doing things. So Jane, I'm going to call on you. Is there anything you can think of that we addressed yesterday that we want to concentrate on today?
I think that both groups have covered the same territory. Yesterday, there were a whole lot of questions about where volunteer hours should go. And it's a generalized thing. All volunteer hours go in the citizenship report. Mm-hmm. Whether they're done in services or citizenship or education, doesn't matter. All the volunteer hours go in the one location. We try not to clutter things up more than we have to. And there was an excellent suggestion to use I never get the right name for this, whatever these things are called. I taught school, I call it an agenda, but I think people call it something else.
Planner. Anyway, it's a planner.
Thank you. Okay. Some of us old people, we can't change the names. So down this column is a great place to record volunteer hours. Yeah. And then you don't lose them. In my chapter, our citizenship officer gives us a file card. And I found that was a terrific help because I have to divide my hours up between my 3 chapters. Right. And so having that card for one then allows me to decide what goes for the others. So
thanks, Beverly.
Good ideas for how to save your hours, right. Not really services. And the other thing is thank you for all the millions of things you do. And in spite of everything Liz has said, I know some of you will forget to put some of the things that have been done in your report, but try, because really it's amazing what chapters accomplish. And if we don't have it written down somewhere, it's hard to tell people. And that's what attracts people to IODE. Yep. What you accomplish in your community brings in people to help do that work and to have fun with. Linda?
Yes, I thought while you're speaking, Jane, I was wondering, for the sake of some new members, I was wondering if you could just briefly update us on this snack pack. I know that all donations will have to be given the year before it is dispersed. So I was wondering if you could just expound on that a bit.
Okay, so in order to get snack pack to the schools for September 2025, IODE from a financial point of view, mandated that services could only plan on using the funds that were available in the snack pack line in national funds on December 31st, which is confirmed by our auditors during the audit process. And so funds that come in after December the 31st, 2024, go to September 26th. So in terms of meeting this year's need for 2025, we need whatever you can do by December 31st. And the other thing that happens to Snack Pack, and again, it's the way things have to be done in financial reports, but we show a large balance on the monthly report for funds, and it isn't a real thing. Now, we did finally persuade to put a little asterisk, and down at the bottom, it tells you how much is already committed to the snack pack that went in September, but it doesn't show as out of our funds because we wait as long as is legal before we pay our bills. And so it looks as if we have twice as much money as we do. So whenever you look at Snack Pack on the monthly reports that you get, you have to subtract what you've been told was the actual cost of the Snack Pack for the current year.
And that
so
was $42,000.
Looks.
Yeah, so it was $42,000 that we needed to pay Snack Pack for the current year that's already been distributed to schools. We set the budget for next year's disbursement, which needs to be in by
December 31st
of this year at $45,000, because the cost of everything that we purchase, as well as the shipping costs, has gone up.
Yeah.
And will continue, no doubt, to go up.
And the other thing is that Snack Pack is used at the school level the way it suits that particular school in that particular year. And one of our schools, I'm not sure how they dispense it, but if it isn't there on the date that school opens, and sometimes the ferry system messes up and it isn't there, or sometimes it's been lifted from the wharf and we have to chase it down, but they say that they can't get the kids to come to school if they don't have Snack Pack.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, wow, never thought of that. One of our schools asked to be included in Snack Pack and said, but we're going to use it in the morning because by the time they come through the dark and the cold to get to school, they need to get together in a group and break bread together, and that helps lift everybody's spirits for the rest of the day. And other schools hold the kids at the end of the school day and they have a lunch before they go home. So each community uses it in a way that really suits their kids, and that's the important thing.
And when we're delivering it, we ask them what they want out of a Snack Pack items. It may very much differ from what you and I might provide our own children or grandchildren or whatever in living in a big city.
Yep.
And, I can look at the nutritional value and go, well, I'm not going to feed my kids this because it's just sugar and fat. But I need to step back from that and go, but if I'm living in a remote community where I get to school in the dark and cold and I haven't really had much to eat at home, then it's a whole different thing. I mean, sorry to make this personal again, but one of the ways I could look at it was we are lucky enough to have a place on one of the Gulf Islands. So if you travel on a ferry between Vancouver and Victoria, you pass through these lovely Gulf Islands. I happen to have a place on one of the largest by area, but smallest by full-time population islands in this group of the Southern Gulf Islands. And the kids can go to elementary school to grade 3 or 4 now on Saturna. If they're going to go up to grade 6 or 7, they take a boat to Main Island, which is the next adjacent island, which doesn't sound very hard, except that they leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. And of course, it's dark and it's cold, and they're on a small ferry. And then if they want to go to the high school, then there's a high school on got the name of the island, Salt Spring Island, and most of them board during the week and come home on the weekends. But thinking about, my kids really wanted to move to Saturna when they were young, because the rules on a Gulf island are much lower than the rules in Vancouver. They could run around, they could climb trees, they could fall in the creek. Luckily, there are no predators on Saturna other than human beings. They really wanted to move there. We realized, of course, that wasn't going to work. But thinking of kids getting up, going in grade 4 or 5 on a ferry ride in the dark to get to school, is very different than the experience of me making them walk to school in Vancouver. And so I had to sort of step back and go, well, the food I might think should go in snack pack is not the same as the food that we provide, but it's what the schools ask for. They love the granola bar type things that we provide. They love cheese strings. They're not, but part of me has a problem with that. I love cheese, but it's the sheer amount of packaging. But we need to think about where we're providing and what we're providing in snack pack. So I agree with Jane. When you look at the amount in snack pack, you wonder why are we continuously asking for more money for snack pack when the money is obviously there, but it's because, as she said, we pay the money out as late as we possibly can. And we've already provided $42,000 worth of food this year, and need in the account by December at least 45,000. And the thing is, we don't want to start at zero for the following year. You know, we prefer to have that buffer of things that are available. So thank you, Jane. That's
yeah, thank you, Liz and Jane, because I think the snack pack is one of those national initiatives that I've been promoting, and I really think it's very important.
It is.
Thank you.
I agree. And I think we need to almost have Jane and Rose Carolyn do another trip and share the hilarious things that happened, just to point out how communities really appreciate those things that we are doing. So, further questions, comments? I want to thank all of you for giving your time today and asking questions and participating. I think it's really important. I think this was a really good idea. It came out of request from members, and I think we should not make this the last time that we get together. You know, and with Karen's comments, I think have been very valid. How can we talk together about, you know, modernizing to some extent, without losing sight of what it is that IOD women do now. But how can we get together and help each other with these forms, with what, you know, is happening in our chapters? I think that the reporting is really important for a variety of reasons. If people come up with questions, please, I think everybody has my email address. I no longer have a house phone. I just use my cell phone for everything, but I will pass that on. If people have questions, please get in touch with me. Even if it's send me a message and say, this is when you can phone me. And I'm more than willing to do that to help you fill in these forms, make sure that we're capturing all of the wonderful things that chapters do and how we can share that with other chapters to improve our patting each other on the back, because we're doing an incredible job. So if there are no further comments that people wish to make or questions. And I do appreciate people who are willing to ask questions. It's usually, you know, somebody asks a question and everybody's going, yeah, I wondered about that, but I didn't want to admit to not understanding. So thank you to those of you who've been willing to ask questions and speak up. It's wonderful to see your smiling faces, and now the sun has sort of come up here, so it feels like the day has really begun. So thank you very much. I really, oh, Rose Carolyn, great. Are you offering to go back to Newfoundland?
No, this is not a go. Well, I might go back to Newfoundland, but I wanted to say thank you to you. This has been very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you, Liz.
It would be not so helpful without all of you being here. So I appreciate everything that you put into it. And as I said, I think this is something we need to keep doing to help. You know, most of you have some experience as services officers. There might be people in your chapter who are thinking that they would like to help out with services or any other thing. The workshops are going to be all posted on the website. The secretary and treasurer's ones are up there, so anybody can in the membership in the members resources area can find their workshops and check them out. And you know, we need to make sure that new members coming in aren't overwhelmed by dumping them into an officer position immediately, but recognizing